So yes, you also talked about something I think is that a relativist is more prone to now. In this sense, I mean a relativist that is really dedicated to figuring out what the implications or the principles that they believe are relativism, are. And I think relativists are prone to an experimentalism. Um, but to me, that is not the proactive, pro-life. See, there's other things besides relativism. Relativism is really like a kind of mathematics or logic or an extension to logic, a way of understanding how contradictions work and when they're resolved, when they might not be resolved, and and there's other issues. So like uh, that we are trying to survive and be living creatures. Well, I think that to use relativism well that way, what you do is you learn how to apply multiple views at the same time, or using time, multitasking. Over time, you can apply them all, even if you have trouble literally doing them at the same time. But I think you can actually do them at the same time, and if your different perspectives all can focus at the same time, they can meld and make a bigger perspective that's, in a sense, multivariate, like the universe is, and naturally triangulates with multiple reasonable perspectives, and maybe some weighted stronger. You can figure out enough to figure out what action you should take. If an idea is circled around by a bunch of equally good uh, perspectives on it, then maybe inaction or maybe an inquiry. If it's like surrounded, but really these ones are obvious, and those it's like someone steals and it's surrounded. Say you see why. Hey, okay, well he had a good reason to steal, and then his father gave him a bad attitude, and then and he had to feed his kid, and you could. But on the other side, you're like, on the other hand, he has a trust fund with $100,000 in it, and he could have just bought the stuff and etc. Then you go, okay, well, those other ones are so weak. Actually, the way I just put it, they become non-existent and false. But maybe not something so extreme. Then you can make a decision of how to act. Yes, he should get the full penalty or not. So I think eventually, basically the mainstream will see relativism this way, and probably by then there'll be some new understanding of relativism that's still more in line. Because, see, by relativism is a kind of idea you can apply it to itself, and then to physical reality, and then back to itself, and so on and so forth, and get a better understanding. And it's an interesting concept because the formulation of relativism from ancient philosophy is still very like the one we have today. It's only been proved more and more in ways that, like the relativity of time, that relativists of a couple thousand years ago, uh, they wouldn't necessarily have imagined that time could be relative. So, but it's fundamentally similar. It's like, again, the relativity of the Galilean relativity, velocity relativity, which is maybe one of the more common sense and accessible kinds of relativity in the material world, but still odd if you think about it from certain perspectives, that there's no fundamental velocity. Um, you I have no idea where I was going with that now, but relativism it does lead to a kind of experimentalism. It can also lead to situational ethics, which are opportunistic, and but I think the point is to have all of the perspectives together. Now we do go for a gain in knowledge, because I believe knowledge is true by demonstration, and it's true by demonstration. So this means that you can actually accomplish something with knowledge. That's always been or for a long time has been my real main criteria of knowledge. That if it's real knowledge, you ought to be able to use it without having to share it. Just you ought to be able to just apply it. Now that doesn't mean some knowledge doesn't require a group of people, because like you might have a knowledge of how to build a bridge with 100 people. Um, but you don't need to convince somebody else like outside that group. You will have to do convincing inside the group for communication reasons, but even then, um, it's the point is that you can demonstrate the knowledge. So, in principle, people could be convinced, and it's really just because of a material reality, um, and therefore there is always a gain to knowledge. But I agree with you that that's not necessarily why. Um, Now, something I wanted to say about money and power and seeking money and power is money and power and Pavlov. Um, you know, with Pavlov, when he rang the bell and the dogs had a reaction as though the bell was food, right? When you signify the food with the bell becomes like food psychologically. So let's think, what things do we signify with money? What things do you need money to get, saying? What is, like the bell was between the mind of the dogs and the food, and so the bell became the food. What is between, what is money between? What is on the other side of money? What do we need to go through money to get? And there's food and shelter and water and medicine and clothes and you name it, everything. So money is everything. Every kind of salivation for any sort of desire, therefore, is becoming bred into being money. The last thing I want to say is going into law. You made another video about that. So going into law, um, we need good lawyers and people that are conscientious and think well about it. You have to watch out because you're going to be doing something that is full of logical fallacies, and though it's more logical in a lot of ways than the mainstream, it's way more illogical than any self-respecting philosophy. So except for an illogical philosophy, an incoherent philosophy in the sense of logically incoherent. So anyway, that's my feedback. Thanks for the videos. I enjoy watching them. So I'll talk to you later.